right, Nathan, what encouraged you the most about this text?
Yeah, so while I was preparing this, just a simple fact that like all these worries and concerns that I have, like, God is the one who's supreme. He's the one who's like taking care of everything that I could worry about, whether it's like how I want it to end or not. So just this truth that all of these things are settled.
Okay. Eric?
I was encouraged to be counted as a fan on God's team who's done nothing but gets the benefits of his victory.
Sorry?
God is glorious. God is supreme. That, I mean, I saw over the sermon, but at some point when you were talking about he will make a fool of anyone who stands against him, I see God glorious. Like, I felt it. It was good. It was glorified, I think, through this sermon.
Okay.
Not too different, but I think I would just say the gap between the supremacy of God and the power of man that you so artfully described. That was encouraging.
Okay. Sinan?
Yes, brother. Thank you for that. The supremacy of God as ruler and his victory for us, given that we didn't contribute a thing to that, but it's ours. You motivated me to want to brag about that, as that boasting piece. So thank you.
Yeah, so similarly, like I love just your point on the supremacy of God, his victory, and just the humbling fact that we did nothing to accomplish that, but we rejoice in that. And the illustration of the sports and being a fan is a good illustration. So that was good.
Yeah, I would say that the thing that encouraged me the most was just this idea that, like, it's not even close, right? So kind of like go back to like with the gap or whatever. It's just like, man, this ain't even like a question of anything. Like, if this text demonstrates anything, it's just like Pharaoh doesn't stand a chance. So that was encouraging. What did you think you missed on?
Yeah, I was telling Josue this before. I just struggle with connecting it, like finding a lot of application and connecting it to us today, and I feel like I did it a little bit, but
Okay.
yeah.
All right, Eric.
Was this a message for pastors?
You want me to answer that?
Yeah, it's a leading question. I didn't feel like it was.
Right.
Not specifically, no.
Okay. This way.
You mentioned your main point and then 2 points over that, the spiritual, and I see that in the whole text, but you mentioned 21 to 23. I just didn't find it that way specifically. 21 to 23 is spiritual, and then
Right.
you're used to that.
Okay. Baxter.
I would have benefited, maybe it's because I'm so used to it in this room, just a really clear statement of the argument up front. I heard you say a great display of God's total supremacy over his enemies. That sounded like, I mean, your main argument was God is supreme, it seemed like. But so that it was kind of implied in that statement at the beginning, and then obviously we definitely landed with it, but I think at the beginning, more clarity. What was your argument?
Yeah, that was it. You had it.
Okay.
And the idea was his supremacy.
All right. Sinan.
Your first point, spiritual powers, was unconvincing. So you drew on the historical context, the cultural, so Ra and Re, and I was like,
Have that down.
how are you weaving this from the text? And I couldn't really ascertain.
So if I'm going to use it, argue it better.
Yeah, and what do you mean spiritual powers? Because
Okay.
were you saying the spiritual powers are the felt darkness
Yeah, so
as
I
a result of their gods?
Mhm.
So I wasn't clear.
Yeah. I originally had like nature and like
Right.
this thing, but I don't know why I really wanted that cultural context,
Yeah.
but I did.
I think it was fine. You just had to explain what it was.
What it was, because I just didn't understand
Right.
Gotcha.
what you were saying is
Right.
spiritual.
Exactly.
Okay,
'Cause
so
we hear
explain the
spiritual.
spiritual part.
Yeah, spiritual's not the problem. But what is the spiritual?
What is it?
Gotcha.
You know, what do you call spiritual?
Wes.
Yeah, you used verse 21 and 24, or sort of your main of like spiritual and human, and then you're making your points and statements, and they're all good and true. But I felt like there was for a while where we kind of like left the text a little bit, and we're reflecting on these points.
Okay. My first thing is not something that actually came up in the sermon, but in the opening prayer. I'm not sure who you were praying to.
Yeah. You pray
Dear
to
Lord,
the
we pray that we would understand who God is and that He would do this and that He would
Oh.
do that. It's like,
Man.
who are you praying to?
Yeah, no, now that you
So-
mention that, I didn't even think about that. Because I wrote it down and I just read it and I was trying to like mean it as I read it.
Yeah.
And I didn't even notice
you-
that.
You meant it.
Yeah, you meant it, which made it even weirder because I was like, hold on.
And the first
Wow.
one was spiritual powers that wasn't
Hey,
defined,
whoa,
so.
Wow, yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
All right. Eric.
That's hilarious. I thought you had the sermon was a great length. I thought your opening intro was good. It was just a little longer than it needed to
Gotcha.
be.
Yeah.
You could have condensed it
Mm-hmm.
and still communicated the same thing.
You were reading pretty well, but at some point you were in Daniel, just little about what you were stick to the script, and then you said, "Oh no, I'm sorry," you know. I mean, so but you already did a good job, even though you didn't read it. I think you didn't need to come back because you already made the point on Daniel. You should just keep going, you know.
Okay. How do you guys come back from a word slip or
Just drive on.
just keep going?
Yep.
Can't take it back.
No, I remember it.
You said in Daniel or something about, oh no, I'm sorry, they didn't, they obeyed their Lord, or they believe in their Lord.
Mhm.
You already made the point, you didn't
Yeah.
need to come back.
Okay. Baxter.
You mentioned this, but I would just underline it. The application piece, not even just to pastors, but just application in general.
Mhm.
There were a couple points where I thought maybe you were trying to imply some application, but yeah, it never felt like your tone changed into a tone of application.
Mhm.
So you just kind of stayed
Yeah.
preaching the whole time, preaching the word, which is great, but adding that in would be a stronger
Thanks.
aspect.
He wants you to not preach the word. All right.
Not true.
Preach the
Come on,
word
Max,
and
read your
application.
application.
You should.
Everything. Come on.
Send it.
How did I was just interested how you divided the passage.
Yeah, so I divided it for the first 3 verses and then the rest. I forgot to mention the
Right.
second point with the verses.
So I thought you were good with your biblical kind of theology
Mhm.
because it was artful. You know, you mentioned the name, but the text was kind of like you're telling a story,
Mm.
and then you ran to Jesus. So knowing where you were when you're working the text would have been helpful. And I think the way you're trying to do it, so not saying
I tried.
like 1,
This was a
2,
hit or a
3
swing.
was a good instinct, but just knowing where you are in what you're trying to do
Okay.
would be
Yeah.
helpful going forward. Yeah.
Wes.
Yeah, just sort of a more minor thing but I just feel like you're looking down and reading a lot, and that might just because I'm on this side and it's kind of an awkward view. Yeah.
It was a tougher interaction with your notes than usual. So my last one is the fact that, like, you should have, you had a great ending, and then you kept going.
Mm.
So this is a team I want to be on, right? And I was like, yeah, like let's pray and shut this thing down. You're like, I got a few more minutes of stuff to say. So it was like, that was the perfect
Yeah.
talk.
Okay.
Like, it was just like, I'm on that team. I want to stay on that team. Yes, sir. And then
It's hard, bro, to let it
You,
Kept going.
well, let's just say everything after that I made not for my notes because I felt like I was making an application it didn't even help.
Yeah.
So I should literally it ends where you said it ends and I added
all
more.
right. Yep, that was a great ending. All right.
Goodness.
Okay.
This is hard.
Yes, it is.
It's-
What do you think you did well?
I think I was able to, after learning about a little bit of rhetoric, I was able to actually like use it a lot better and like understand what it
Yep.
is. So
Okay.
like these knots, this,
Oh yeah.
or things like that. So
Mhm.
as I said, those are fun.
Right. Exactly.
So-
Yeah. This gets to be fun. You get a handle.
Yeah.
Eric.
I thought, to piggyback on what Sinan mentioned, your little biblical theology run to Jesus, like, you probably heard me. I was right there when you were about to get
Yeah,
to
well,
Jesus. I was like ready
Keep
for
going.
it. So I thought that generally speaking, that was artfully done, and I was like, gosh, if that's where you're at after, I don't know how many times you've tried to do that.
First.
How much, if that's where you're at now, I'm like, I can't wait to see what that looks like after you've done it 20 times.
I think you did a good job on the context as well, like giving a background, and that brought a lot of help to understand. You know, when you said this is the 9th plague, so that means, you know, that was good, and that helped to understand the context why it's important. This is not a 9th plague, so context was good.
Baxter.
I'll share some of the rhetorical pieces I really enjoyed. Specifically, calling the Egyptians idiots, maybe not the use of that word, but calling them idiots and then saying how they actually would call themselves idiots, kind of how you flipped it there. How you talked about Pharaoh being but a man, but a child, but a pawn in the hand of God, and then your line, God has no rival. You had that part where it was never,
Yeah,
and then it was always God, the God of the Hebrews, this God, the supreme one. So, yeah, just to encourage you, I thought that was the strongest like change. Given we've heard you preach before a couple times now, that was so noticeable in this sermon. Just your use of rhetoric.
Yep. Sinan.
Very clever use of the opening illustration, beginning and end, and then couching it so you didn't lose the two sides in your middle section, especially when you got to the gospel connection. So pick a side, you know. So there's one concept you're using, and it kind of communicated the passage quite well. Keep doing that stuff, man.
Lord help me too.
Wes.
Yeah, I enjoyed when you were fleshing out the darkness to be felt. You know, just fleshing out, helping people to really see it and feel it. Of like, this is darkness that was to be feared and revered. And then talking about electricity and like just trying to picture that and the illustration of the cave. I thought you did really good fleshing that out, helping us to see it, hear it, and feel it.
Yeah, I really like the fact that you kind of, well, just in the beginning, it was in the context part, but you just kind of summed up all the plagues. You're like, here's the point of all the plagues,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
You just said that all will know who is God, right?
And then I think you said something like, and that's what's happening here too.
Exactly.
So it tied it.
Yeah. So it's not a question of who is the greatest. It's just God demonstrating that He is the greatest, right? So that was a great way to kind of just encapsulate all of these things in one go. Eric.
I thought, even though I missed your main point, like the exact verbiage, that you came back to it in different ways, and especially the word supreme and supremacy, you kept hitting that. So by the end, I was like, I had followed you, but I definitely know it was about the supremacy of God. So that was clear and good.
Yeah, yeah, God was glorified, just to say that again. But I like one of the applications you did when you talk about, you made a transition between the Egyptians and then how they thought they were right, that they had the right God, and then you came to the virus today, and that
Yep.
that transition that was
Mhm.
that was good, because it applies to today.
Can't use that for much longer. Well, maybe I can. Who knows?
I again, just on delivery and seeing things that you included just from our class yesterday, I feel like your use of pauses was very effective. Even at the end, this is the supreme God. Like I wrote it down with periods because you just paused to emphasize. You were playing with a lot of stuff, energy-wise, pausing, rhetorical
Mhm.
tools, and it was very engaging the whole time for us. So I thought that was great.
Thank you.
And then,
Yeah. I do agree with the kind of double landing at the end, but if you could just, you had a turn that was kind of coming down, and that was like the sword landing. So, I mean, just tweaking the landing, the double landing, but the way you did it was really good in terms of you're looking us in between the eyes and guys, which side do you belong, you know? So, job, man.
Yeah, I enjoyed the one part when you were talking about like the Egyptians, worshiping these false gods. Baxter talked about earlier, like you mentioned, like they're idiots, but then like, hey, they'll look at us like idiots because we trust in ourselves.
That was great.
That was really good.
I love that one.
yeah. Cause almost all mine have been mentioned. The only thing I'll say at the end is like that part where you went back to Genesis 1, just very briefly.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh no, we're gonna be here for a while. But you just kind of went back and you said, like, he's the one that created the light, right? He's the one that controls the darkness. Just like that little thing. I was like, oh, great use of that, like going back to the very beginning and then to highlight what's going on here. It was great. There we go.
One in the back.
Another one down.